Today is not really an answer I give you, it is more an explanation about some of my projects. Today I start with the project called Terra, or Terra in Italian. Some people ask me to make a sort of presentation of several compositions of mine or several projects, so I take the time to explain the project with a lot of data, a lot of videos. I have a lot of pictures that these documents are inside my archives unseen, so probably it is the good moment to share them with you. The Terra project comes from a personal need that was I want to do it to create a choreography. So concerts are not sufficient for me anymore, and I'm trying and I'm using different media to express myself. So Terra is my first project that I sign as a composer and also a choreographer. First I have to give you the context. I want, since some years ago, to create a sort of tribute to women state. As you know better than me, because of some movements like Me Too, but not only this movement that is quite hard and specific, but as you know, in Europe, probably as in the USA and in many other countries around the world, women have not the same rights or the same equality of salary, of possibilities than men. It is a truth, it's a fact. And since more than 20 years ago, I started meeting a lot of feminist associations or foundations, and I work with them, of course, giving my own contribution, but I felt the need to do something more. So I conceived a project called Alias, or Alias in English, sorry, that is 5 projects inside one project. It means Alias is a tribute to women, and I decided to give a wider than possible spectrum of what women are for me. For this reason, I look to a cosmology. Specific cosmology comes from Asia more than Europe. In Europe we have 4 elements, like in the US of course, but in some other countries, in some other philosophies, we have 5 elements. Of course we have the water, air, earth and fire. But the 5th one, in some culture, can be considered the spirit, can be considered be able on thinking. But also in some other culture also is the trees inside the nature, so trees and flowers. So I was interested to give not 4 version of what women are for me and how to make a tribute to women, but I looked for 5 let's say sub-projects to build one main project. This tribute consists in composing the music from my own point of view, but working with women artists, women performances, women creative person. So on the stage there will be women practicing their own arts, and I compose the music. So the Terra project is the first one of this group of projects, and it is music and dance. I looked for a while in Europe for a dancer that was open-minded and who could work with me on this project, knowing that I am a composer and not a choreographer, and who was ready to accept my own choreography. So I've met on the social network Peiju Chen-Pot, the first dancer in Cram Company. Nowadays she's the principal guest dancer. At the time, more than 3 years ago, she was the first dancer, or the principal dancer. I went to New York with my wife Gaia, and I met her and I told her, look, I have a project, a strange one, using some sensors for breathing. If I come here on your own time, you decide when, okay? I come here with an engineer, with a technician, and we spend some time building together this project. You have to know that David Kuller, coming from Boston, conceived the device I'm wearing all the time, the device for breathing. Sometimes it's orange when I'm during the performances. But David conceived this tools, and he asked me to make several projects. So I brought David with me in New York, and I brought also Julien Vincenot as an assistant, and we worked during a while for several periods, more than once, with Peju, and we worked to make tests, different kind of tests. The tests were mainly based how the sensor reacts, how a dancer can react with this kind of sensors on the breast, and the presence of David was absolutely necessary, because at that time, more than 3 years ago, the device that David conceived was extremely fragile, extremely prototype. So David was there to calibrate all the time, to make some arrangements, to repair it sometimes because it broke often. So it was really a group of people working around these tests. From a point of view of the choreography, the tests were quite simple. I wanted to check some passage with Pei laying on the floor and just breathing and having very essential and trivial movement. Then Peju sitting down, and then of course Peju moving in the space. So at the beginning, Terra was a sort of list of constraints, or list of how we can say, yes, constraint structure, and to see how this structure could react with the sensor or could be adapted because of the sensor. We spent several days working in Martha Graham building in New York, then in New Jersey in Nimbus dance company, and it was quite strange because I was behind a computer or in front of a computer all the time. Peju was dancing alone with this sensor, so it was not really natural for dancers and musicians. In general, we look at each other, we don't look at the screen, then we use a camera to make the tests and to see later, after, sorry. So Peju knew about my project Body Score, the project thanks to which I write on bodies, music on bodies. It is a very, very body-centered project, feeling music, feeling on your own skin, on your own body. So Peju asked me to write on her body some rhythmical passages of the music that I was composing with her and on which she danced later. So it was a sort of need, a sort of need for her and for myself to feel something physically, not only through sensors or through computers, but the project Body Score in this case was just a link, to make a link between us as a human being, sorry. So when the Terra project was born, Terra project comes before Argo project. Argo project is my project based on my breathing, the same sensor that I wear all the time, 24 hours a day and 7 days on 7 every week. So since almost 3 years ago, I'm wearing this sensor all the time. But Terra was born before. And this is very important because when I started Terra project, I didn't have yet a location where to show it. So when I met Peju at the very first time, I asked her to make this common work. She decided, she took the same decision as me to make this test, and when the project was completely done, I still not have any location where to show it. But at the same time, as Argo has been exposed at Grand Palais, and it was quite, it has a very big success. For the evening of sponsors, you know that in any kind of big institution you need sponsors to make artistic productions and all the program. So the Grand Palais did every year they do an evening where they invite the main sponsors from all the world, mainly from France, but they are from all the world, to make a contribution for the Grand Palais. And among these sponsors, there was my own sponsors, Camille Fournet, and they wanted to have a sort of private moment to show Argo project. They sponsorized, of course, to invite their own guests, their own client, and they say to invite the environment that is close to Camille Fournet. For these reasons, I spoke with the direction of Grand Palais, telling them that for Camille Fournet I would have created a sort of special events with Peiju, and I asked them if they were interested in. Of course, they were interested in. That's why we did the first premiere, the world premiere for the evening for sponsors. This is very important to know because the whole project takes 15 minutes length. To the contrary, the one I will show you takes 5 minutes because Grand Palais asked me to do something very, very specific. As during the evening of sponsors, people comes by groups, by waves, and they come inside Grand Palais. They arrive where Argo was shown on the big stairs of Grand Palais. They stay there for 5-6 minutes, and then we have to make people move and calling other people. So I have to conceive a performance quite short. It is really difficult to conceive something that short, 5 minutes. With a dancer, I'm not a dancer, and in order to make people moving after each presentation of the performance. This is important to know because the complete work was never shown completely as we did at Grand Palais. I construct with Peiju the whole project, but we never could show it as a whole project. So I realized the whole project with another dancer, Fanny Gombert. She comes too from grammar school. And with Fanny, unfortunately, I can show you only some photos because I do not still have a complete good quality video to show you. But it's important to know that the complete work starts with some position on the floor, then standing, and then many other things. But the show we did in Grand Palais is just 5 minutes, the so-called fighting with the tissue, with this kind of how can I say, costume worn by Peiju. It is really important also to know that Grand Palais wanted me to be on stage. Of course, there was not a normal stage, there was these big stairs, but as I was the selected artist to this special evening, because people could see and listen Argo breathing all the time on the stairs at Grand Palais, they wanted to be sure that the audience would have made the connection between Argo project, Jacopo is breathing, and Jacopo invites Peiju, and they breathe together and they make a choreography together. So can you imagine me dancing? Please don't do it. Me neither. So I have to conceive a choreography. Even if I do not dance, I have to be there with Peiju, with my shape and Peiju's shape, and I have to move and to do something, not only breathing. So it was really difficult for me how to conceive something, not to be ridiculous, but to be expressive and to move while Peiju is dancing, and using the technology of the breathing, because all the music comes from my breath and Peiju's breath. As for Argo, Terra is based on the breathing sensor conceived by David Kuller. So the beginning of Terra is just Peiju and me breathing. As I said you before, Peiju and me, we needed to test many things. Mainly, I've foreseen a section Terra while I have to make an interactivity with Peiju, but as I cannot dance, I conceived the part with the camera that detects my fingers and my hands, and like in magicians, I transform these movements into sound. Now you can see some experiences we did at Gram Studios, just testing. In this case, I use a device called Leap Motion. It's a commercial device. It's a sort of camera that has two modes of detection of movements of hands. This camera can recognize the hands, the right one from the left one, and each finger. And as you can see in this simulation, you can see how my hands can be not only detected, but each finger can describe some trajectories. So I can transform all these trajectories into parameters for controlling and generating sound. This device is extremely good in order to detect hands, fingers, while you are seated in front of a computer or even standing, but in front of the camera and the computer. So I needed something different. I needed a tool that allows me to move around page and using my hands in order to produce sound. So as you can see, I conceived something completely new that didn't exist before. Two gloves, you can see one of them. I designed the concept and I sent to Guillaume Bertrand, a French engineer who could build it. I just conceived and formalized it, but Guillaume could realize it. As you can see, this gloves has triggers to trigger sound files composed by me, but they have also a sort of distance sensor, a laser that allows me to know and to detect how far I am from my body or from the body of page, and also belonging to how I make the inclination of my hands, I can create new file audio, new sounds through which page can react dancing. Pei and me, we spent several weeks working at Graham Studio, or like here in Nimbus Studio in New Jersey, in order to find the good parameter for gloves, but also the good choreography for the performance. Two are the reasons why I decided to ask Peju Chenpot to work with me on this production. The first one is because she perfectly knows the techniques of the so-called classical dance, but also she spent a lot of time in Graham Company, so she also knows the modern and contemporary dance techniques. At the same time, Peju practices also martial arts and hip-hop dance, so she's extremely open-minded, and as I wanted to do something new, I wanted to work with such a dancer. The second reason is based on the fact that she performed many times Martha Graham's ballet called Lamentation, during which, as you can see in this picture, she fights against a sort of tissue. The costume she's wearing is a sort of constraint to canalize her movement and her possibility of movements. In Terra, I want to show the strength of women. So there is a sort of fight, and Pei fights against this tissue. Terra is a sort of tribute to how women can free themselves and to decide if they want to wear something or if they want to remove something that does not belong to them. As many dancers, Peju is really used to dance with long clothes, as you can see in these pictures. But I didn't want to use this kind of costume, I wanted to use something really constraining. Another part of the choreography is based on my personal inspiration, took from images or sculptures of movies or even cartoons from my own culture. As you can see in this example, I took the Winged Victory, the very famous sculpture housed in Louvre in France. This sculpture for me represents a sort of strength, a body of a woman, with the arms that can be like wings, so strong that she could fly. In order to define a methodology with Peju to work, I use these kind of images taken by my own culture. I create some stylized drawing, simplified them, so I can show them to Peju, and Pei can define with me how to put them into movement. I would like to show you now the section about the fighting between Peju and her own dress. Peju then can remove this cloth and then she can dance completely free. As I said before, I took inspiration from several kinds of sources. In this case, it is from the movie Matrix, while Trinity jumps out of the motorbike and she produces this shape with her body. So I make the stylization of this image, then I adapted them for Peju. I show to her, and let's see how Peju make this interpretation. The rest of the choreography is based on other position, let's call fixed position, that I draw and I make some sketches. I show them to Peju, and Pei, in a sort of looping system between her and me, between her body and my music, she makes an interpretation of this movement till when we decide together to fix them and to decide that these are the definitive movements. Here is another example that comes from Michael Jackson. This photo you can see comes from a Michael Jackson performance. I made the reduced versions like a drawing. I showed to Peju, and then we decide together how to make the interpretation. Let's see together. Another example comes from a so-called classical dance. As you can see, I make the drawing, I show to Peju, but I ask her to produce this shape, producing as much as she could strength. Here is the last example. I took the inspiration from a cartoon when I was a child, and I took this shape. It is a man, but who cares? It is a sort of strength position. I make a drawing about it, and I show to Peju, and I ask her to make the interpretation of this shape at the end of the performance. So I hope that this presentation could show you how I conceived and how I composed Terra. At the same time, thanks to this project now, Peju and me, we will do several projects together all around the world. And thanks to this first artistic action in Paris, I could work with her in New York, and very soon we will work together in Taiwan, and I hope, honestly, all around the world. de la seconde main. Sorry, you're right. Because I'm talking. Yeah, but you're right. I'm sorry. I like very much. We should do this. If it happens, stay.